Have you ever thought about this? Is it even possible to map out every single philosophical belief a person could have about, life, death, the universe, the whole shebang? It sounds kind of crazy, right? But what if I told you that 2,500 years ago, a text called the Brahmajala Sutta, or the Supreme Net, tried to do exactly that? So let's dive into this. It's an incredible ancient thought experiment. Okay, so picture this. The story kicks off on some dusty road in ancient India. You've got the Buddha and his monks just walking along. And right behind them, you've got these two other guys. A teacher, his name's Suppiya, and his student, Brahmadatta. And they are just going at it. Suppiya, the teacher, is just trashing the Buddha, nonstop criticism. But his student, Brahmadatta, is doing the exact opposite, singing his praises. They're completely locked in this fundamental disagreement. So, of course, the Buddha's monks overhear this whole debate, and it really gets them talking. You can imagine, right? And it brings up this massive question, one that, honestly, we still wrestle with today. When you come across a new idea or a new teacher, how do you judge them? What are the grounds? What's the right measuring stick to decide if something is worthy of praise or blame? All right, so when the Buddha finds out his monks are hashing this out, he sees this as a perfect opportunity, a classic teaching moment. And get this, he isn't really interested in who's right or wrong in the argument between the teacher and the student. Not at all. What he's interested in is the reaction to the argument itself. And his first piece of advice is, well, it's pretty radical. He tells his followers, look, if people are out there criticizing me, you shouldn't get all angry and upset. And on the flip side, if people are praising me, you shouldn't get all happy and elated either. And you got to ask why. Well, because both of those reactions, he says, are just traps. Getting angry totally clouds your judgment. And getting all giddy and elated, well, that just makes you biased. Neither one helps you see things clearly. Okay, so then the Buddha kind of shifts gears. He acknowledges that, yeah, a regular person would have plenty of reasons to praise him, just based on how he acts. And he starts to lay out what those reasons might be. But he calls them, interestingly, the minor details. And wow, this list is long. I mean, he talks about not harming any living thing, not lying, avoiding gossip, not getting caught up in shows and entertainment. He even mentions not sleeping in fancy beds or handling money. When you hear all that, it's really easy to see why the student, Brahmadatta, was so impressed. This is someone with just incredible ethical discipline, right? But then, here comes the twist. After laying out this whole impressive list of admirable qualities, the Buddha basically says that praising him for any of this stuff is, well, it's trifling. Trivial. It's the small stuff. And that just blows everyone's mind, right? So the big question becomes, if all that incredible ethical conduct isn't the main event, then what on earth is? And this is where we really get to the core of the whole teaching. The Buddha says, okay, forget that surface level stuff. There are things that are so much deeper, so much more profound to understand. And this is what he calls the Brahmajala. Now, the central metaphor here is just so powerful. I want you to imagine a giant, vast net, and it's been cast out over the entire ocean of human thought. The Buddha is saying this net is so perfectly designed that it catches every single possible philosophical fish, every speculative view about reality that a human being could ever possibly come up with. And he doesn't just talk about it in the abstract. He systematically organizes all of these views. He says there are a total of 62 of them. He breaks them down into two big categories. First, you've got 18 views that are all about the past. Where did we come from? Is the world eternal? That kind of thing. And then you have 44 views that are all about the future. What happens after we die? Is there a soul? The big questions. So what kind of fish are actually in this net? Well, for starters, you've got all the classic opposites. Think about it. You've got eternalism, the belief that you have an eternal soul, the universe just goes on forever. And then, caught in the very same net, you've got its polar opposite, annihilationism, the idea that when you die, you're just gone, poof, nothing. Both views, completely opposite, both caught. Here's another great example of a pair caught in the net. It's the whole question of scale. Is the world finite, like a contained little bubble floating in space? Or is it infinite, just stretching on forever and ever in every direction? Again, the net catches both. It catches every single one of these speculations. It's like a complete taxonomy of belief. But this is where it gets really, really profound. The Buddha isn't actually interested in debating which of these 62 views is the right one. He's not trying to pick a winner. No, what he's fascinated by is the one thing they all have in common: where they come from psychologically. Okay, so the Buddha breaks it down like this. He argues that every single one of these big speculative views starts with something really simple: sensory experience. First, there's contact. Information comes in through your senses. Then, that contact creates a feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, whatever. From that feeling, craving pops up. We want more of the good stuff, less of the bad. That craving then hardens into clinging, like a mental fist. And only then, at the very end, to justify and defend that emotional clinging, do we build a whole philosophical view. So our grandest ideas about the universe, they're actually born from this deeply personal and emotional process. And this right here is the punchline. Fiercely holding on to any of these beliefs, arguing about them, defending them to the death, is, as the text so vividly puts it, just the wriggling and writhing of those caught in the net. It's not a sign of wisdom, it's a symptom. It's a sign that we're trapped by our own cravings and attachments. So, okay, if all these big, grand philosophies are really just traps, then how in the world do you get free? What's the escape route? How do you get out of the net? Well, the first step is what he's just done. He has identified and perfectly mapped out all 62 of those possible speculative views. He's laid the whole trap bare for us to see. And now for the big reveal. Out of those 62 views, how many does he actually endorse as the capital T truth? The answer is 0. A big fat 0, not a single one. He doesn't pick a winner from the pile. And that's because, for the Buddha, freedom isn't about finding the right philosophical answer that's already tangled up in the net. No, freedom comes from understanding the psychological process that makes us so desperate for an answer in the first place. It's about turning the spotlight around and understanding the questioner, understanding ourselves. So, this ancient lesson, it really leaves us with a powerful question for our own lives right now. We might not be debating eternal souls versus annihilationism over dinner anymore, but that underlying mechanism, that's timeless. So it makes you wonder, what are the modern nets of views? Political, social, even technological beliefs that we get caught in today. Where do we find ourselves wriggling and writhing, absolutely convinced that our little corner of the net is the whole entire ocean?